Afternoon, all. In my previous post, I started having a discussion with you all about education planning and answering a very, very vital question, which is, can I afford to send my child to study abroad? In the first post, I had spoken about how important it was to start planning early and speaking to an expert. And to just recap on that very, very quickly, the reason you need to start planning early is because you need as much time as possible. But the second part is also very important, which is the plan. You need to know exactly what it is you're planning towards, which is when the expert comes in, because the expert is the person who can then guide you on exactly how you go about building this plan and figuring out what you're planning towards. Which brings me on to what I want to discuss today, which is two issues. The first being currency diversification. Any person living in Malawi who is planning on sending their child abroad for university has to consider that these university fees and the costs will have to happen in foreign currency. And you only have to look at an example of Zimbabwe and everything that's going on right now to understand how difficult it must be for any parent who may be thinking of sending their child abroad and the need for them to have access to foreign currency in order to pay for that. If there is a reasonable expectation that there might become a time where there is a difficulty to access foreign currency, having savings in a diversified currency and hard currency is absolutely vital. The second thing that I want to discuss today is figuring out the destination. Now, this is absolutely important when you're thinking about where you're going to send your child to university. The world has opened up, and now you have parents sending their children to Eastern Asia, Australia, Russia, and maybe perhaps moving away from the more traditional areas that people previously sent their children to, such as South Africa, the United Kingdom, or the United States. But regardless of where their children are being sent, it is very, very important to understand what the cost implications of every country is going to be. What is the cost of medical aid in the country you're sending your child to? Will your child live on campus, or will they have their own apartment? Knowing the legislation of the country you're going to send your child to is extremely important. Case in point, I recently encountered a Scottish woman that has lived in Malawi for over a decade. Now, she was unaware that in order for her children to study in Scotland and for free, her children would have to have ordinarily been residents in Scotland for a period of 3 years or more for a reason other than going to Scotland for university. What this means is that there is a very, very serious cost implication of her children having lived abroad and only going back to Scotland for their studies. These are things that everybody should be aware of, regardless of where you're coming from. And that's just an example. So let's look at practical, and let's look at numbers. If we look at this education calculator, and there are several assumptions that have been made while looking at this education calculator, that a 4-year degree is the length of 4 years. So if anybody is watching this and they have children, they should pay close attention. If this gentleman who needs help planning for their children's education has a son named John and a daughter named Mary. John is 8 years old and Mary is 4 years old, and he hopes to send his child to the United Kingdom for their tertiary education. John would be going to university in 11 years, assuming that he starts university at 19, and Mary would be going to university in 15 years. Taking into consideration both the tuition fees and the cost of living outlined here, the current educational costs for John and Mary respectively would be $380,000 and $446,082 respectively for 4-year degrees for both of them. The total present value coming to $826,000, but that of course is today. If we adjust for inflation and move to when the children would actually be going to, for the period that both children would be in university, this parent would be looking to spend 1.1 million United States dollars for the cost of their tuition and their upkeep. Now our assumption takes into consideration the cost of accommodation, medical aid, flights, etc., etc. If you are a parent who is thinking of sending their child to university abroad and you've not gone through a calculator such as this, then you might be underestimating or miscalculating the true cost of university. as I said, we will continue these conversations throughout the week. And this is just the second of a series of posts. But please, I urge you to tag any parents you know, regardless of how old their children are. Tag them in the comment section below, and let's get this conversation started. Whether they have children that are in university or have children that have already completed university abroad, let's have the conversation. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.